Good morning and happy October to everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Sandra Barba and I'm the Marketing Event Specialist here at Certent and your moderator for today's presentation on 5 steps to improved financial reporting. Before I introduce our presenters for today, I'd like to go over just a few housekeeping details. You should be able to hear us through your computer, but if you wish to hear our presentation on your phone rather than your computer, please select the telephone option under the audio panel located on the right-hand side of your webinar control box. Dial a phone number listed, the access code, and the audio pin. Also located on the right-hand side of your webinar control box, you'll find a chat box in which you can type and communicate with our presenters or myself at any time during our event. Just type your question in the box, and we'll make sure to address it as it comes in or at the end of the presentation. Today's webinar is being recorded, and a recording and PDF copy of this presentation will be sent to you in our thank you for attending email within 24 hours of this presentation. If you are joining us today to gain CPE credit, we use the following measurements for qualification. You must stay logged on to the webinar for 50 minutes or more, participate in at least 3 out of our 4 polling questions, and complete a brief survey at the end of the webinar. If you indeed qualify, a copy of your CPE certificate will be emailed to you within 1 week of this presentation. Now I'd like to take a moment to introduce our presenters for today. Joining us this morning is Sean Sandoval. Sean is the Director of Education at Certent and has been with the company for 6 years. Sean has worn many hats, from product support to mutual fund guru, and now leads Certant's education department. Sean has over 15 years of experience in financial reporting and travels the U.S. delivering training to financial reporting professionals. Sean is an expert instructor who is passionate about enabling people to do their jobs more efficiently and effectively. Joining him this morning is Austin Terry. Austin is a manager of compliance services at Certent and has been with the company for more than 5 years. He has extensive experience creating, reviewing, improving, and delivering high-quality financial reports to the SEC. In addition to the XBRL services he delivers to clients, Austin also provides on-site and web-based training and is passionate about helping companies navigate through the world of XBRL from beginning to end. Sean, Austin, thank you for joining us this morning. And now I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Austin.
Thank you very much, Sandy. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. We do have a few learning objectives we'd like to accomplish today. The first is going to be determining strategies to document key financial reporting processes. Then we're going to identify formatting best practices that can improve readability. We'll be able to review research tactics to help reduce compliance risks, discuss key XBRL concepts for high-quality filings, and learn what tools to employ to save time and improve collaboration. But first, we do have our first polling question for today. What best describes your SEC reporting process? I use A financial printer who handles all requirements and filings, B, a software solution to manage requirements and filings, C, a combination of software and a financial printer to manage requirements and filings, D, I do not file / am not involved in the SEC reporting process, and E, not applicable.
Great, thank you, Austin. And those of you that are just joining us or just jumping on the webinar, this is our first polling question for the webinar. And if you are here for CPE credits, one of our qualifications of measurement would be participating in at least 3 of these 4 polling questions. So this would be polling question number 1. And thank you for joining us. If you're just hopping on, my name is Sandra Barba, and I'll be your moderator for today. If you do have any questions, you could go ahead and put those in the chat box, and we'll go ahead and address those as they come in or at the end of the presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and close up that polling question and share the responses that we have from the audience. And Austin, it looks like about 34% of the attendees online today use a software solution to manage their requirements and filing. So I'm going to go ahead and close that up and move on into the presentation.
All right, thanks, Sandy. We will be passing it off to Sean now, and he will continue on.
Awesome. Thank you, Austin, and thank you, Sandy. And I just want to say a quick hello to everybody out there. Okay, so our first segment here we'll be talking about documenting your key processes. And so there's been many quarters of trial and error, if you will. What works, what doesn't. We've talked to our clients. We've had many debriefs with clients out there to determine what are the key processes that we want to document. And one of the things that we've learned is that communication is key. Right? So communicating with whoever that might be. We have our designated accountants here. As Sandy told you, Austin is a manager of one of the teams here, one of the compliance teams. So he's got a group of designated accountants that work with him on his team, and communication is key. Just keeping that open between your third-party vendor, whoever that might be, your designated accountant, and the reporting team. Okay, so being able to gather that information. So where is that information coming from? What is the information? What is the information that we need coming up here for Q3? Q3 is right here in our laps. So what is that information that we need? Who has that? Who has the proper information, and how are we going to get it? So you definitely want to make sure that there's a lot of preparation in advance. Compiling that data as effectively as possible. One of the things might be creating a spreadsheet for each one of the stakeholders and clearly delineating who has that responsibility, and again, just that communication, right? It also might be pre-programming email reminders that'll help you save some time. Making sure, right, that when you've rolled that document forward, right? So we want to make sure we've just finished up Q2, so now we want to make sure we've got Q3 is ready to go. And again, that Q3 document, that's going to be our version, what we call the one version of the truth. Okay. If you're working, so one of the things that we like to make sure that we do is that if you are working with a vendor, like I said, we've got our team of designated accountants here, make sure you have that contact information, whether it might be the phone number, the emails, potentially the hours of operation, whatever that information, you want to have that handy. We always too like to say that your designated accountant, just think of that person as part of your external reporting team. Again, so managing comments, right? So you may want to develop a committee and discuss how those comments are managed. Coordinate pre-quarter close meetings so that we know, again, where those comments are coming from, who's in charge of those comments, who gathers all that information together, and who sends all that information back out so that we can review that information. Also, absolutely want to create a calendar and distribute that, and we want to make sure that that's distributed. Again, right? You want to think of that designated accountant as part of your external reporting team. So you absolutely want to make sure that your designated accountant is receiving that information so that they know, okay, this is when we plan to have major drafts, so that we know that some potential revisions are going to come in. When's the audit committee, right? We want to know that type of information. And also, absolutely, when are you planning to file, right? So a lot of good information there. That we want to know and pass along to your designated accountant. Also, I know we've got some private and public companies. So again, if you have that filing requirement, you have that filing deadline, might want to potentially consider moving to a self-filing model so that you can make some last-minute changes. You don't have that pencils down rule. Also, when we're talking about calendars, you're going to have the opportunity to download the SEC calendar at the end of this presentation, and it's going to provide some great information for you, SEC filing deadlines, holiday closures, when the Edgar system is up and you can file, and then also suggestions as to when you want to review your filing and most importantly test file, right? Because you want to send a valid filing to the SEC. Okay, again, for our public companies out there, you do, if you are filing on your own, you want to make sure, this is very, very critical, you do want to make sure that you have the appropriate credentials. Okay, so you do want to make sure, because you will need certain things. You'll need your CIK, your CCC, or your CIK confirmation code, and your password if you're going to file directly to the SEC. So very, very key. You do want to make sure that you grab that information in advance. I know that filing time can be could potentially be stressful. Got a lot of things going on, so definitely want to make sure that you have those credentials. You know, we've been in situations before where sometimes it's like, oh, I think the attorney has those. No, the reporting team has those. No, you know, so absolutely want to make sure that you have that SEC information. And our designated accountants can help you get that information. If for some reason your password has expired, we can help you reset that information. You also do want to think about any type of final checks that you do. We're calling them last-minute checks here, but there'll be things that we absolutely recommend as far as signature dates. You might have your filing date has changed, so potentially you want to make sure that those dates are correct. Exhibits, you want to make sure that you are including all your exhibits, right? And then also for XBRL out there, again, for the public folks, you've got that XBRL requirement, so you want to make sure and look at that DEI, that document entity information, and also the parentheticals. Right, and the reason that we call those out is because they're, you know, it's just an area that we've seen where there could be some potential error. So absolutely want to look at those things: dates, exhibits, DEI, parentheticals. And again, we absolutely emphasize test filing. So you do want to make sure that that you are test filing, and your designated accountant would do that often, would test file for you often. So you're making sure, don't want any surprises come filing date. Okay, we talked about this a little bit before. This was in rolling forward, right? Like I said, Q3 is here, and so we want to roll that document forward from Q2 to Q3. So we just want to make sure that that your templates have been updated from prior quarter information. And again, if a public company, want to make sure you look at those narratives, and any kind of changes, right? If there's any changes, you absolutely want to make sure that you're communicating that throughout the team, and also to your designated accountant or to that third-party vendor, so that we can make any of the XBRL updates and also any type of suggestions as well. So you might want to list out any type of preparatory items and even have a checklist. Okay, so very, very common practice here at Certent that we'll do that. We love checklists here. The compliance team uses them quite a bit. Lots of sign-offs and things like that. A lot of manager reviews. Okay, so now we're in something else to think about. You absolutely want to make sure that you conduct a post-mortem. So what are the things that worked and what didn't work, right? That's what we're talking about here. So you absolutely do want to make sure that you do include everybody when you do have that post-mortem discussion. And again, you'll absolutely want to include your vendor, your designated accountant in that discussion. You also want to make sure what was successful, what worked well, and what didn't work well. Where are the things that need to be improved? Because each quarter, right, and like we talked about at the beginning, some of these we've had some when we're coming up with our checklist and we're coming up with our processes, right? Each quarter has given us a chance to refine and improve the financial reporting process. And I kind of always, I always did this when I was a designated accountant too. Is I had just, I had a notebook and I would write things down, as I saw what was working, what didn't work, those types of things, and then I was ready. I was ready for that postmortem, and I can discuss those things with my client and with everybody that was involved on that team. Alrighty. So now that takes us to our next polling question number 2. We assess our financial reporting and processes. A, after every 10Q. B, after every 10K. C, upon contract renewal with our vendor. D, well, we've been meaning to do that. And E is NA.
Great, thank you, Sean. And I went ahead and released that polling question on your webinar viewer. You can just go ahead and move that mouse over and click the most appropriate response. And for those of you that jumped on the line with us, this is polling question number 2 of 4. To gain CPE credit, you would need to answer at least 3 out of our 4 polling questions. So I appreciate those responses, and looks like we had a pretty quick response there. So we're going to go ahead and close up the polling question and share the results. And it looks like about 34% of the attendees today assess their financial reporting and XBRL processes after every 10Q. Sean, what do you think about that?
I think that's absolutely great, and I like to see that. And again, it's a standard practice here at Certent that we'll have those quarterly debrief calls. It's a standard practice. Austin and his team will have those quarterly debrief calls with all of our clients.
Great. I'm going to go ahead and hide up that polling question, and we're going to jump back into the presentation.
Awesome. Thank you. And so our next step is going to be formatting best practices, and I will let Austin guide us through that.
Thanks, Sean. As Sean had mentioned, we'll be talking about formatting best practices. And, by adopting best practices around formatting, it's going to be critical to making sure that your financial reports are clean and improves readability. To kick us off here, we're going to go through some helpful Excel tips and tricks. The first one that's going to be just a very basic one, hopefully everyone's already familiar with it. If not, this is something new you'll be able to learn, is by using the Control key and the page up and down, you'll be able to quickly navigate through a large worksheet. You'll be going, each time you do a page up or page down, you'll be going tab forward or tab back. It allows you to, if you have some of those massive Excel sheets that we've seen for all the different notes and all the different to pull in from your ERP systems, it's going to allow you to navigate through that much more quickly than you had previously. In addition to that, you can use the Format Painter to copy a tile of a cell to another cell, or you can do rows or columns or even whole sheets. By double-clicking the Formatting Painter button, you're able to maintain that formatting from whatever cell you're trying to copy, or row or column, and that's going to be able to copy that formatting to each individual cell, row, column that you apply it to. That's going to bring over anything such as any indentations, fonts, font sizes, colors of fonts, basically anything that's going to be formatting related within the cell, row, or column that you have selected is going to be copied onto the next one. In addition to using that formatting painter, we like to use the group and ungroup feature instead of using hide and unhide. That can be found underneath the data tab within your Excel sheet, and it's just a little bit easier to use system than the hide and unhide. I'm sure everyone's familiar with it. You'd have all these columns or rows you don't necessarily need from quarter to quarter. Big examples saying moving from your Q1 to Q2 is you have 3 and 6 months ended as opposed to just 3 months ended for your Q1 stuff. You want to be able to quickly access and keep those different columns and all the data and formulas that you want to keep there. And by using the group, we're actually able to more quickly and efficiently identify where those columns may be hiding, and we can use that to just make our processes a little bit more efficient as opposed to just having to either look at the row numbers and say, oh, there's something hiding there, or maybe even the columns, checking to see if all the letters match up. By using that feature, it just makes it a little bit better. In addition, using the Control and the tilde, which is the little squiggly button right next to your formulas, will actually allow you to show all the formulas in whatever sheet you're looking at. This comes huge and handy when you're trying to, add rows, columns, anything like that, and you want to make sure that you don't mess up any of your formulas because a lot of times they're pulling data from other sheets, or any of the data you're pulling into, like any of the data that you're not necessarily using specifically for your 10Q or 10K, but you are going to need to use that formula. In addition, and we'll continue on to our other Excel tips and tricks, by using the F3 shortcut, we'll actually show you all of your named ranges in the documents. And for those unfamiliar with named ranges, they are basically sections of cells that you have identified as important for the certain product. We actually use those for linking within our Word product. And by using the F3 button, you can actually quickly shortcut to those named ranges, so you can find where they are quickly and identify the tables that you're trying to work with or make any changes to. Additionally, you can use a carriage return to control any sort of wrapping you want, be that in a heading or a row, and that's going to be accomplished by using Alt-Enter. And what it does, it allows that, it provides that hard return within a cell so that you can control where that word is going to wrap, as opposed to letting Excel kind of choose that for you. Non-breaking spaces allow words to stick together, and that's going to be accomplished by using Alt-0160, or you can see down below in our little graphic below, Control-Shift-Space as well. And what those allow those words to kind of stick together and won't necessarily wrap when you need them to. It's specifically months and days are going to be big ones that you want to kind of keep together, so that you don't have say September and then having a return 30/2015. You want to keep that September 30 together. And by also using the Alt key and doing 0150, we'll create an M dash, which is a little bit longer dash than what you're really familiar with when just using the minus sign. Word will automatically kind of convert those for you, but you can actually key in those by using those specific keys. As you can see on the graphic below, as I said, we do have the non-breaking space there. In addition, we show you the M dash of the Alt-0150. You can increase and decrease the font size by using Control-Shift and the greater than or less than. And you can also quickly adjust any sort of line spacing by using Control-1, 2, or Control-5 to do a 1.5 line space. And Control-Z, I know everyone's familiar with. There's always something where you need to undo what you just did. Control-Z will get rid of that. And then, finally, to reveal formatting within your Excel sheet, you can do Shift F1. It's something that's going to be very helpful as you're trying to review that Excel sheet and make sure everything looks good. And you just want to make sure everything is perfect. To continue on, we'll roll into some helpful tricks with Word. And if you're not familiar with the Pilcrow underneath the Home tab, it's going to be something that's going to be your best friend when you're doing the formatting. What that's going to do is that's going to reveal any sort of formatting throughout the document. It's going to show you any hard returns, soft returns, all the spaces, any non-breaking spaces. It's going to show you any page breaks, any section breaks, basically any of the formatting stuff when you're looking at a document and you're like, I wish this lined up a little bit better, maybe something's not quite spaced right. That Show Formatting button, that Pilcrow as it's called, will reveal it all within the document. Just a simple click of the button, it'll show you everything in the whole document. It may look like a bit much when you do it the first time, but believe me, once you use it, you pretty much will never go back. Additionally, Word has the same format painter that Excel does. The format painter is also located within the Home button, the Home ribbon on your Word sheet. By double-clicking the format painter, you can apply that formatting through multiple places in the document. If you just click it once, it's going to apply that formatting to whatever section you click on first, and then it's going to drop it. But by double-clicking, you'll be able to click and apply that formatting from whatever section you choose throughout the whole document. And that's going to be for individual words, it's going to be for tables, it's going to be for whole paragraphs, even whole pages if you want. It makes it it's a very useful tool when you're trying to get that consistent formatting throughout the whole document. Additionally, with Word, if you're not familiar with the additional paragraph options, there's the Keep with Next and Keep Lines Together. They are critical in making sure that your document it's clean, it makes sense, and it's easy to read. The Keep Lines Together, what that does is that it keeps whole paragraphs together, so it keeps basically lines together. That makes sense. When it's trying to break across a page. You can see on our little graphic here on the right the difference between keep lines together and keep lines together off and then with it on. In the first one, you'll see in the paragraph highlighted in blue, it's coming up on the page, in this middle of the paragraph, it breaks across, and it kind of disrupts the flow a little bit. By turning on the keep lines together, it actually it keeps that whole paragraph together and breaks that paragraph before, at the end of the last paragraph and before that first one begins, so that it keeps it nice and smooth, it keeps it looking well, it looks good, and it just makes that consistent formatting throughout the document. Now, Keep with Next is a little bit different in that as opposed to keeping lines together within a paragraph, it'll actually keep paragraphs together or tables and paragraphs together. As you can see in the second example on the right, the Keep with Next, when it's turned off, has the two paragraphs that you may want to keep together, but then it breaks them apart. And if we turn it on, it actually keeps those two paragraphs together and breaks the page, puts the page break in before that first paragraph so that those two items are together. And this is going to be critical with tables because you don't necessarily want it to break with the heading for a table on one page and then a table on the second page. It makes it look a little bit cleaner, a little bit better, and just makes the whole document experience just better in general. And that can be found, as I mentioned, within the Home tab under the paragraph, and then on the bottom right corner of it, there's a little icon there that'll bring up those options for you to use. Additionally, within Word, we continue on. We have the split screen option that will allow you to split up a document into two separate screens. So if you're trying to work on one section that may be referencing another, you're able to split those screens so you can work on the section below and have that reference on the top. Or for us that we use frequently is when we're doing the formatting, we like to have whatever section we are trying to keep the formatting and make consistent throughout the document on the top, and then we'll have that as a reference throughout the rest of the document on the bottom as we're scrolling through, making sure that that formatting is going to match throughout the whole document. And by using bookmarks, you're able to quickly move throughout the document. Bookmarks are found within the Insert tab. You're able to add them by highlighting a word and adding a bookmark. If you want a word, paragraph, table, really kind of whatever point you want that bookmark to be a part of. And using that, we can actually, under the Quick Parts icon, use the fields and do hyperlinks, or we can even do page references. Page references are going to be critical for your table of contents, and using those bookmarks for the page references, what will allow those table of contents to do is to constantly update the page in the table of contents to whatever that bookmark is on. So say you have in your financials, you need to remove a note. What you can do is when you remove that, go up to your table of contents. As long as that page reference is still there, update the table of contents, and that will automatically pull in the page number that your notes that were after what you had removed is already updated on the table of contents. Additionally, hyperlinks are going to be a big part of your table of contents as well. They can reference the same bookmarks that the page references do and allow you to quickly navigate throughout the document. So both of those are going to be critical to just making the formatting of your document just a little bit better, a little bit cleaner. Now, consistent formatting is going to be key throughout the document. You want to use the same style, the same font, and as well as keep the same size, except for headers. Headers are going to be a little bit different. Generally, they're going to be a little bit bigger, maybe some bold, kind of stuff like that. But you want to maintain all that consistent formatting throughout the document so that it looks good and maintains that clean look. Now, you want to use your company brand colors throughout the document. It will just keep it nice and consistent. And then you'll be able to be looking for any of your brands or graphics. You want to be able to use them throughout your document as well. Your marketing team should be able to provide those to you. If not, you may be able to have a graphic designer help you there as well. It's going to be big and important, especially for you that do file publicly, that do have proxy statements that do need to be released. It's important to have a good impression for them. You want to be able to utilize your brand and organize the content so that it's appealing, readable and easy to navigate. Now, additionally, to go with that consistent formatting throughout the document is you want to maintain table banding. Table banding can be used to replace dotted leaders to that document, in addition to providing a little bit more easily readable tables. By using that banding, it just makes for a document a clean look. It makes it easy to discern tables, easy to discern line items on tables if you're trying to do any sort of research or just look at it, and it just makes it look clean, and really it kind of puts that document up on the next level. Now, banding can be done either in Excel or it can be done in Word, either one of those, by using the fill paint can you can see over on the right. You'll be able to use that when you highlight a row. You can use that and it'll highlight and pull that banding into either the Excel or the Word document. They both function the same. With Certant's product, if you were to band it within the Excel sheet and link it over, that will pull that banding through. Additionally, Certant's Word tool does allow for quick one-button banding on individual tables or the whole documents. Now, oh yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you if I could just ask a couple quick questions here. Now, as far as the banding goes, I've seen some filings with it. I've seen some without. Is that a requirement? What is that? Is that an SEC requirement? How do I know if I need a band or not?
Good question, Sean. It's actually not a requirement. You can file with or without banding. There are a number of companies that do file without banding. The only difference is that it just provides that clean look. It makes it look next level, really, is what it does. It makes it so that it's easy for you to navigate, as well as any of your investors that are looking at the tables that want to just be able to look at it quickly and discern what line items have what values.
Awesome, thank you. And then when you were talking about revealing formatting, what'd you call that little squiggly line? I'll just call it a squiggly.
It's called the tilde. So
yeah,
it's
learned something new today, a tilde.
Yeah,
I just
absolutely.
always call it a squiggly line.
Yeah, the squiggly line next to the one. That's what it is, right?
Yep, awesome. Very good, thank you.
All right. Well, Sean, I appreciate it. So let's move on to our next polling question. And let's say, what is your biggest formatting challenge in Word? Is it A, the header/footer, B, pagination, C, navigation, D, tables, or E, other/not applicable?
Great. Thank you, Austin. I did launch that polling question. Yep, Sean, you're right. You learn something new every day. I used to call it the squiggly line too, and now I learned something new. So for our audience that is attending today, if you are online for CPE Credit, just another reminder, this is polling question number 3 of 4. And your certificate will be emailed to you within 1 week of this presentation. If you missed that memo and you were wondering, I'm answering all the questions, when am I going to get that certificate? It will be released 1 week after this presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and close up the responses, and it looks like and we're going to share those results. And it looks like about 33% of our attendees, Austin, say tabling is their biggest formatting challenge in Word. What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, definitely getting those tables consistent throughout the document is a tough thing to do, just to make sure all the spacing is correct. But certain tools definitely help that, but it's just going to be a lot of practice, and using that formatting button within the Word document is going to help out immensely as well.
Great. I'm going to go ahead and hide that polling question up, and we're going to jump back into the presentation with Sean.
Awesome. Thanks, Sandy. And I just want to let you know too, Sandy, if there are any questions like during the presentation here, absolutely feel free to let us know, and we'll try to get to those as we can.
Great. Thank you.
And I just wanted to touch on one other thing too before moving on to our next section here, which is disclosure research. A key point that Austin talked about is consistency. So in formatting, consistency is key. So you do want to make sure, I think Austin gave some great examples about fonts, colors, those types of things. And then the consistency piece of it is when you're going from Excel to Word, to make sure that that you are using the same font. It's not necessarily that we want you to use the font that we use, but that it's consistent, right? Because you want things to look consistent when going from Excel to Word, and then if you have to file to the SEC of how it's going to look in HTML. So Austin made a great point about consistency there.
Hey, Sean, before you jump in, I did have a question that for more directed to Austin. Somebody had a question on table banding. Is that a button or a manual format painter?
So it's going to be a manual format painter using the normal Excel and Word tools. However, Certent tools does allow a one-button banding in our Word product. But if you're going to be using just the normal Excel and Word, it's going to be a specific formatting painter.
Great. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. So we'll move into the next section here, which is talking about research, right? So what are the benefits? You want to be able to improve that disclosure management process and reduce those errors. You want to be able to save time, so save valuable time and ensure regulatory compliance by leveraging other peer disclosures. Who are my peers? What's my competition? Right, and then also since you're already using information that's been out to the SEC, it's been vetted, it's been audited, those types of things, so you'll know that and sending out good information when you are filing, or also when you're sending information to management. And some examples of some things that you would do research on is there's SEC correspondence information out there, various approaches to how auditors view things, how they view the different disclosures in the filings. And then sample notes, MD&A information. There's just a vast array of information that's available out there. Okay, also some more information to look for. Formatting, so when FASB, the SEC, IFRS, when they're publishing updates, standard updates, right, this is a good opportunity to go out there and grab information that, like I said, like your peers already may be disclosing. And you can take that information and you can bring that information in to your disclosure and take it one step further and make it your own, and really just kind of make it your own. And like I said, some of the legwork might have already been done for you, so you're saving time. You're saving valuable time when you're time crunched and your boss is asking you to get that stuff out sooner. We want to file sooner, all that kind of stuff, right? All those pressures that we all feel. So that's a great area to save time. And then what are the requirements? Maybe the requirements, maybe it's a new filing, or a filing that you haven't disclosed, or I'm sorry, a disclosure that you haven't had to write in a while. So you're able to go in research, what's the industry? What's the industry standard out there, right? So I'm able to analyze my competitors' reports, and then I can fill it in with my details. Again, right, also we always want to make sure that we're reducing risk. So we want to make sure when we go out there, when we do that research, right, we're already grabbing information that's already been vetted by the SEC, and then also been audited. So again, when you're when you're grabbing that narrative information, right, as accountants, you might be more of a numbers person, so you're kind of looking, I know that I have all the numbers here, but I need to have a way to visualize it or contextualize it. And some of that, going out and researching out how my competitors, how my peers are disclosing that information is a great way for me to do that. So the data or the numbers, the values, those are the facts, right? But that's only part of the story. That's only part of the story. So that narrative can help me kind of fill in some of those gaps. And again, when we go out there to the SEC, we're looking at information that's already out there with the SEC. That information's been vetted. That information's been audited. Right, so there could be ways, it could be company ABC, they had a data leak in 2010, and now company XYZ, they had a similar one. So how did company ABC, how did they write that information, and how was it received? How was that information received? And that'll help me or other companies out there write that information so that they have a good response. Okay. So what is some of the challenges, right? So some of the challenges, it could be very, very laborious, right? It could be time consuming, right? I've got to get information from different sources. So that can take a long time, a lot of valuable time during this Q3 peak that's coming up there. I got a little tongue-tied there. It can be very expensive as well. I mean, especially if you're grabbing information if you're using a third-party vendor, that can be very, very expensive, grabbing that information from a third-party vendor. If it's fragmented or piecemealed, you're not sure where information is coming from. It's not collaborative, right? So how does that information fit into one of your disclosures, okay? Because you're not sure what's the context, right? So these are just some challenges, right, that can result in low productivity. Again, we talked about high costs, right? If that information is coming from a third-party vendor, that can be very, very expensive. And then also, as we know, there's some risk involved there as well. Okay. Disclosure research and that disclosure research solution. So again, that's integrated solution within the Certent platform. There could be other platforms that also have that out there. What are the benefits, right? So higher productivity. We talked about some of the challenges being lower productivity. So higher productivity, we're collaborating, right? We're all working with that one version of the truth. We've got that one document, we're all working in that. That's our version of the truth. Lower cost because that research is being integrated into our disclosures. So again, we're not using a third-party vendor to do that research for us. That research is coming up right for our disclosures. We're getting alerts. We're getting alerted to what that information might be, those types of things. So that gives us better quality disclosures. And again, we'll have a good quality peer analysis information. We'll have precedents, things like that, that we can use in our disclosures. And some of the things that we can grab out there will be, again, we've talked about this a little bit, but that SEC correspondence commentary information, right? CEO compensation. I know that's a big kind of a big thing coming up here shortly. Those ratios. Exhibits, right? You can even research on exhibits. So how are other exhibits out there being displayed? How are they being written? Redlining. That's pretty huge, redlining, because we can compare filings, right? We can compare two different filings and how things have changed, right? And we can even figure out things like why did company XYZ, why did they amend, right? Because we'll be able to do a red line and see what that amendment was. And also, research, kind of think of research as a key component of disclosure management today. I mean, in today's world, right, we have to do research. They're not really two separate or distinct functions anymore. Okay. Alrighty. That moves us over to our next section, and I'll let Austin discuss that, and that's improving the XBRL quality. Again, we know that that we've got some private and some public companies out there, but there could be, one day you can join the XBRL world if your company does ever IPO and they do become a public company, then you will be required to file XBRL. So Austin's going to help us with some quality checklists and some points about XBRL. So thank you, Austin.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. As Sean had said, we do hope that this will actually help broaden your knowledge base if you do not have to deal with XBRL right now, because you may have to in the future. So hopefully this will expand some of your knowledge base and at the very least help with career development. To go on with that, one of the biggest items that we do need to do when we're doing our XBRL quality is to review negative instance document values. Now, the big thing regarding this is that we do have a one-way concept value and then a two-way concept value. So the difference between that is going to be a one-way concept really should only have a positive instance document value. That's going to be a value that's going to have only positive values because this element has been defined as a credit element, and it's going to be a credit in the instance document, so it should be a positive value, as opposed to if it had a negative value, you'd have it be a debit in the instance document and would just be incorrect. The difference between that and the two-way concept is that a two-way concept element will actually allow for the positive and the negative values to be present within the instance document associated with that element. To kind of go with a little bit of an example about this, on your cash flow statement, most people are familiar with proceeds from a long-term debt. A proceeds from a long-term debt is an element within the taxonomy that is a one-way element because it's saying it is defined as proceeds, it's going to be a debit, and it should be a positive value. And then in addition to that, we do have the repayments of long-term debt, which is the same thing, a one-way concept element that's going to have a positive value within the instance document, and it's going to be a credit written out to the instance document. Now with that, we do have a total proceeds from and repayments of long-term debt. That's going to be your two-way element. That can be associated with a positive or a negative value because when that's applied, it's going to say, hey, the positive values are going to be the proceeds and all the negative values are going to be the repayments. So you should see the correct instance document values based upon whichever value is going to be positive or negative using that two-way concept. So that's going to be very important to that because you want to make sure that all these negative instance document values are correctly associated with the two-way concept type of elements. In addition to negative instance document values, you want to review your calculation link bases. I don't know if any of you guys remember that do file publicly. A couple years ago, there was the Dear CFO letter that did go out to some companies. Basically, that was sent out to companies that were not including any sort of calculation link bases within the documents. The calculation link base is important because it improves the quality of the data, and users can see the roll-up in calculation and relationship of elements to values within the document. I can't tell you the number of times I've seen a client that the calculation has shown us that a value is off due to a rounding error because it doesn't calculate up. And we're able to see that in the software, provide it to the client, and then they can make the adjustments so that everything looks like it's up there and provides the correct calculation. Now, the calculation link bases are required anytime that two or more elements are totaling up to another element. So that's kind of a base of reference when you're looking at your documents and the XBRL portion of it, to know whether or not you're going to need a calculation link base. And if we continue on, the XBRL rendering is going to be a huge part of your quality checklist as well. That's something we do multiple times throughout our filing season. It's going to be a matter of reviewing labels, calendars, scales, and making sure that all your levels 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s are rendering. It's very easy to just do a high-level overview of your level 1s and 2s and 3s, make sure all your tables and footnotes are there in their entirety. Doing the level 4 rendering is going to be a little bit more time-intensive, but it definitely is an important part to make sure everything is there, because when you're doing that level 4 rendering, you'll be able to see those labels and calendars and scales that may not match up and may need to have some sort of tagging adjustment to it. In addition to that, we do have validation tools that will test against the Edgar Filer Manual, business rules, and calculation summations, and then consistency warnings as well. But those don't replace the SEC test filing. You will want to make sure that you do a test filing, because that's going to provide you with the data and whether or not you're actually going to be able to file the document itself. In addition to that, you'll want to review extended elements, especially after you're doing your taxonomy conversion. There are a number of times where the new taxonomy will be published, but it won't be available for use. And so say an extended element was created, modeled after one that is currently there, that is not currently available, but it is within the new taxonomy. So you want to make sure that all of those extended elements have been reviewed, so you've updated to whatever new taxonomy you're using, or there may be a new concept that is now present in taxonomy that wasn't there before. So reviewing those extended elements are going to be critical as part of your quality, to make sure that it is some of the best stuff that you can file with. Now, for your off-peak XBRL review, there are a few things you can do when you have a little bit more time. So reviewing those extended elements is a good opportunity too, because they are going to take a little bit more time. And especially you want to take a look at those monetary item types on your face financials, especially because those are going to be the most visible, and those you want to make sure are accurate as you possibly can. So anytime you have a few minutes, you want to take a look at those things, and that way, when you're rolling into your next queue and you're ready to go, everything is looking good. One of the other items that we should also be reviewing during the off-peak is going to be reviewing relationships and accounting concepts when compared to the taxonomy structures. So that's going to be a big part, is going to be reviewing your axis and domain combinations, making sure that any members you have are under the appropriate axis, and that those axes are appropriate for use within whatever section you're trying to disclose. For example, you don't want a long-term debt member underneath the subsequent event axis. That's just not the appropriate use of the XBRL structure that has been provided by FASB. The only thing you really want underneath those subsequent event axis is going to be a subsequent event member. And same thing with that long-term debt, it's going to have its own long-term debt axis. So granted, you aren't going to see any glaring examples like that, but it's good to kind of review and make sure that everything kind of makes sense, and those concepts that are being disclosed make sense when compared to the definition and how the taxonomy is structured. You'll also want to take a look at any sort of taxonomy updates and implementation guidelines that FASB may have released, in addition to industry best practices provided by XBRL US or any of those other items there as well. They'll be able to provide you with any new information and allow you to make sure that your XBRL is in great shape. All right, and now on to our final polling question. Does your company currently utilize the free data quality check available through XBRL US for XBRL filings? A yes, B no, or C not sure?
Great, thank you, Austin. And just for those who are attending for CPE Credit, this is polling question number 4 of 4. You must participate in at least 3 of those 4 polling questions, and we do appreciate your time here. And for those of you that are interested in the PDF copy of this presentation, that will also be sent to you in our thank you follow-up message within 24 hours of this presentation. So hang on tight, folks. We're almost done with our presentation. We have a lot of great information that we've shared. We have a little bit more coming up for you, and then we'll be ending the webinar here shortly. So I'm going to go ahead and close up the responses and share the results. And Austin, it looks about 62% of the audience currently utilize the free data quality check available through XBRL US and XBRL filings. So I'm going to go ahead and hide up the responses, and we're going to jump back into the last portion of our presentation.
Awesome, thanks, Sandy. So tools to save time and improve collaboration there. Alrighty, so evaluating that current process. So before we talked about, setting up that checklist. Now we want to talk about evaluating your current process. What features from that current process are most important to retain? So you want to understand the areas where you can improve and look at some pain points, right? You want to look at pain points like, is pencils down? Is that causing you a pain point? Those types of things, right? What are the areas where you can improve? We always know we want a faster, we're always getting, sure, we want to file sooner, right? We want a faster close schedule. All those types of things. How do we get there? Okay. How about industry best practices, right? If I'm doing research, what are those industry best practices that I can adopt and that I can include in my filings? And then what features am I looking to add as well? Right? I've got information coming from all kinds of different places. How do I get that information into that one version of the truth? What are the functionality limitations of the current process, right? And it could be as well, it could be, okay, I'm using standard Excel and Word, which is very, very popular in the reporting industry. But also, is that standard Excel and Word, is that causing me any kind of limitations, right? How can I improve that process? And again, does my current platform, does my current process, am I able to integrate that information into that one version of the truth? And again, we want to make sure that we're identifying those pain points, and you will have that opportunity to discuss that in your quarterly debrief with your designated accountant. And again, you want to make sure here as we're starting to wrap up, what is some of that key functionality, right? So that linking that functionality between your different documents, right? That one version of the truth, keeping that together, whether it be coming from Excel to Word, and then potentially PowerPoint as well, right? Austin talked about consistency when the formatting, consistency being the key. Controlling that multi-user access, so we have this one version of the truth, we have many people accessing that one version of the truth, if you will, so we want to make sure that that access is controlled, and we also want to be able to track who's making those edits, what was the edit that they made, when did they make that edit, those types of things. And then also, if I'm filing to the SEC, right, if I'm doing that, we talked about being able to grab those SEC credentials and having those handy when I do filing, and then also being able to transform that information from my external reporting, and then I also potentially have some internal reporting or some internal presentations that I also need to build.
Great. Thank you so much, Sean. And I dropped in the chat box some additional resources for you. Sean discussed the research tool. Certent has a standalone product that you can go ahead and utilize. We call it our DisclosureNet product. And we do have a product demonstration on October 13 if you're more interested in that, and that link is embedded in your chat box. And for those of you on the line that are interested in just kind of looking at that research tool, we are offering a 30-day free trial for our DisclosureNet research tool. And so if you're interested, you could go ahead and click on that free trial registration page and utilize that for 30 days. We've also dropped in that SEC filing calendar that the team discussed to go ahead and help you through your reporting processes, and some PC shortcuts and Word formatting tips. We dropped those links in the chat box. So we do appreciate everybody's time today. If you do have any questions that may come about after the webinar, you can go ahead and reach out to Sean or Austin, and Sean's going to go ahead and share with you the contact slide. You can reach out to sean.sandoval@certent.com or austin.terry@certent.com, or you can reach out to marketing@certent.com. So we appreciate your time today. Everyone have an excellent week, and thank you so much.
Awesome, everyone. Thank you.